The Appalachian Meeting, November 14th, 1957. 58 of the most powerful crime bosses in America gathered at Joseph Barbara's estate in upstate New York. This wasn't just another mob meeting. This was the Commission, the ruling body of organized crime, convening to discuss territory, operations, and the future of the American underworld. And for the first time in history, they'd invited a black gangster to sit at the table, Bumpy Johnson, the undisputed king of Harlem. But not everyone was happy about it. The meeting room was thick with cigar smoke and tension. Long mahogany table, crystal glasses filled with expensive scotch, men in tailored suits worth more than most people's annual salary. At the head sat Vito Genovese, the most powerful Don in New York, flanked by Carlo Gambino, Joe Bonanno, and Tommy Lucchese. These were men who controlled entire cities, who decided who lived and who died with a nod of their heads. Bumpy Johnson sat 3 seats down from Genovese, the only black face in a room of Italian Americans. He wore a charcoal gray suit, perfectly pressed, his expression calm, unreadable. He'd been invited because Harlem generated millions in revenue, numbers, drugs, protection rackets, and the Italian families wanted their cut. But invitation didn't mean respect. Not yet. The meeting had been going for 2 hours. Discussions about heroin distribution routes, about casino operations in Havana, about labor union infiltration. Bumpy had listened, contributed when asked, his voice measured and intelligent. He understood the game. He knew these men saw him as useful, but not equal, a necessary partner, but not one of them. Then Vincent Gigante spoke up. The Chin, Genovese's most trusted enforcer, a man known for brutal efficiency and absolute loyalty to the Italian families. Gigante was massive, 6'3", 240 pounds of muscle and menace. He'd killed his first man at 17, his 20th before he turned 30, and he had a problem with Bumpy Johnson sitting at this table. I got a question, Gigante said, his voice cutting through the conversation. The room went quiet. Everyone knew when the Chin spoke, you listened. We're sitting here talking about millions of dollars, about operations that affect families from New York to Chicago to Los Angeles. And I'm looking around this table and I see something that doesn't fit. Bumpy didn't react, didn't move, just watched Gigante with those dark, intelligent eyes. Gigante leaned forward. We got Italians here. Men whose families built this thing from nothing. Men who understand honor, omerta, the code we live by. Men who've proven themselves through blood and loyalty. He paused, let the words hang. And then we got Harlem. The insult was clear. Not we got Bumpy Johnson. Not we got a representative from Harlem. Just Harlem, like it was a problem, a stain on their operation. Carlo Gambino shifted uncomfortably. Joe Bonanno studied his drink. They knew where this was going, and they knew it could get ugly fast. Now I ain't saying Harlem doesn't make money, Gigante continued. It does, good money. But let's be honest about what it is. It's numbers running and street-level dealing. It ain't what we do. It ain't the sophisticated operations we're discussing here. Bumpy still hadn't moved. His hands rested calmly on the table, his breathing steady. But everyone in that room could feel the temperature dropping. So my question, Gigante said, looking directly at Bumpy now, is why are we pretending this is a partnership of equals? Why are we sitting here acting like Harlem belongs at this table when it's really just a subsidiary operation? A minor league team trying to play in the majors? The room was dead silent. This wasn't just an insult. This was a direct challenge to Bumpy's authority, his legitimacy, his right to be there. In the world of organized crime, where respect was currency and reputation was everything, Gigante had just tried to destroy Bumpy Johnson in front of the most powerful men in America. Vito Genovese watched, his face unreadable. He hadn't stopped Gigante, which meant he either agreed or wanted to see how Bumpy would respond. This was a test. Fail it, and Bumpy would leave this meeting diminished, his power questioned, his territory vulnerable. The Italian families would move into Harlem like sharks smelling blood. Bumpy took a slow sip of his scotch, set the glass down gently. Then he looked at Gigante, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost conversational. Harlem feeds your families. 5 words. That's all he said. 5 words delivered with absolute calm, absolute certainty. Then he sat back and waited. Gigante blinked. What? Bumpy didn't repeat himself, didn't elaborate, just held Gigante's gaze with those dark eyes that had seen 20 years of war, betrayal, and survival in the most dangerous neighborhood in America. But everyone in that room understood exactly what those 5 words meant. Carlo Gambino understood. His family's heroin came through Harlem's distribution network. Without Bumpy's cooperation, the Gambinos would lose millions. Tommy Lucchese understood. His numbers operation in the Bronx depended on Harlem's runners, on Bumpy's infrastructure, on the system Johnson had built over 2 decades. Joe Bonanno understood. His protection rackets in Upper Manhattan worked because Bumpy allowed them to work, because there was an understanding, a peace that kept everyone profitable. Even Vito Genovese understood. The Genovese family's drug empire, the operation that generated more money than everything else combined, ran through Harlem. Through Bumpy's streets, Bumpy's dealers, Bumpy's protection. Harlem wasn't a subsidiary. Harlem was the foundation. Remove Bumpy Johnson, and the entire structure collapsed. Gigante's face reddened. "You threatening us?" Bumpy's expression didn't change. "I'm stating a fact. You asked why Harlem sits at this table. That's why. Your families eat because Harlem allows it. Your operations run because Harlem cooperates. Your money flows because Harlem keeps the peace." He paused. "You want to test that? Go ahead. See how long your distribution network lasts when Harlem closes its doors." The threat was implicit, but crystal clear. Bumpy controlled the streets. The Italian families controlled the supply and the political connections. But Bumpy controlled the ground-level infrastructure that made everything work. He had 10,000 people in Harlem who answered to him. He had police on his payroll, politicians in his pocket, and a community that saw him as protector, not oppressor. If Bumpy wanted to, he could shut down every Italian operation in Harlem overnight, could seize their drug shipments, kill their dealers, burn their warehouses, and the Italian families couldn't stop him without starting a war that would cost them millions and draw federal attention they couldn't afford. Vito Genovese finally spoke. His voice was measured, diplomatic. "Vincent, sit down." Gigante looked at his boss, surprised. "Boss, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." "Sit down." Gigante sat. His jaw was clenched, his massive hands curled into fists, but he sat. Genovese turned to Bumpy. "Mr. Johnson makes a valid point. Harlem is a critical part of our operations. Perhaps we should remember that partnerships work both ways." It was as close to an apology as a man like Genovese would ever give. And it was a public acknowledgement that Bumpy Johnson was right, that Harlem wasn't minor league, that this black gangster from upstate had just put one of the most feared enforcers in the Italian mob in his place. But Bumpy wasn't done. "There's something else you should understand," he said quietly. "You talk about honor and omerta and the code you live by. Like those things belong to you. Like black folks don't understand loyalty or family or protecting what's ours." He leaned forward slightly. "My people have been protecting each other for 300 years, since before your grandparents got off the boat from Sicily. We've survived slavery, Jim Crow, lynchings, race riots, and every attempt to destroy us. And we're still here." The room was absolutely silent. "So when you talk about honor," Bumpy continued, "when you talk about loyalty and blood and code, understand that Harlem wrote that book long before you read it. The difference is, we don't brag about it. We just live it." He stood up. The movement was casual, unhurried, but every man in that room tensed. "Now I came here because I was invited, because I believe in cooperation and mutual profit, but I don't need this table. Harlem was making money before this commission existed, and it'll make money long after. So here's how this works going forward." Bumpy looked around the table, meeting each man's eyes. "You want Harlem's cooperation? You treat Harlem with respect. You want access to our streets, our infrastructure, our protection? You remember that it's a privilege, not a right. And if anyone at this table or in your families has a problem with that, if anyone thinks Harlem is minor league or subsidiary or anything less than equal, then we can end this partnership right now. I'll walk out that door, and you can try running your operations without us." He let that sink in. "But I promise you, within 6 months, your heroin network collapses. Your numbers operation dies. Your protection rackets fall apart. Because Harlem isn't just territory. Harlem is people. And those people answer to me, not you." Vito Genovese studied Bumpy for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. Not a warm smile, but one of recognition, of respect. "You've made your point, Mr. Johnson, and you're right. This is a partnership of equals. Anyone who doesn't understand that can leave this table." He looked at Gigante. The message was clear. Bumpy nodded once, then sat back down. The meeting continued, but everything had changed. The Italian Dons asked Bumpy's opinion on distribution routes, deferred to his knowledge of street-level operations, treated him not as a useful outsider, but as one of them. When the meeting ended 3 hours later, as the bosses filed out to their cars, Carlo Gambino pulled Bumpy aside. "That was dangerous," Gambino said quietly. "Standing up to Gigante like that, threatening the families. You could have started a war." Bumpy looked at the old Don. "Could have. Didn't. Because they know I'm right. They need Harlem more than Harlem needs them." "Maybe," Gambino said. "But you made an enemy today. The chin doesn't forget." "I've had enemies before. I'm still here." Gambino smiled slightly. "Yes, you are. And that's why you belong at that table." He extended his hand. "Respect, Mr. Johnson." Bumpy shook it. "Respect, Mr. Gambino." But the real test came 2 weeks later. Vincent Gigante wasn't the type to let an insult slide. Being humiliated in front of the commission, being forced to back down by a black gangster, that was unacceptable. So Gigante did what he always did when someone disrespected him. He sent a message. On November 28, 1957, 3 of Bumpy's numbers runners were found beaten nearly to death in an alley off 125th Street. They'd been worked over professionally, broken bones, internal injuries, but kept alive, and each one had the same message carved into their backs with a knife. "Know your place." Bumpy received the news in his office. Illinois Gordon delivered the report, his voice tight with anger. It was Gigante's crew. Witnesses saw them. They didn't even try to hide it. Bumpy was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up the phone, dialed a number he'd memorized but never used. "This is Bumpy Johnson. I need to speak with Mr. Genovese." 2 hours later, Bumpy sat in a private room at Rao's restaurant in East Harlem. Across from him, Vito Genovese, flanked by 2 bodyguards. "You know why I'm here," Bumpy said. Genovese nodded. "Vincent acted without authorization. I've already spoken to him." "Spoken to him isn't enough. 3 of my people are in the hospital." The message was clear. This was retaliation for what happened at Apalachin. "And what do you want me to do about it?" Bumpy leaned forward. "I want you to remember what I said at that meeting. Harlem feeds your families. We're partners, equals. But if your people attack mine, if they think they can terrorize Harlem because they're embarrassed, then we have a problem." Genovese's eyes hardened. "You threatening me now?" "I'm reminding you of reality. You can't control Gigante. Fine. But understand that if he comes at Harlem again, I respond. And when I respond, your heroin operation in Harlem stops. Every dealer, every corner, every dollar, gone. You want to test that?" The 2 men stared at each other. 2 titans of organized crime, one Italian, one black, both understanding that this moment would define their relationship going forward. "Not good enough. I need a public gesture, something that shows Harlem that the commission respects the partnership." "What kind of gesture?" Bumpy told him. 3 days later, Vincent Gigante was summoned to a meeting with Vito Genovese. When he arrived, he found not just his boss, but Carlo Gambino, Tommy Lucchese, and Joe Bonanno, the commission. Genovese didn't waste time. "You attacked Bumpy Johnson's people without authorization." Gigante's jaw tightened. "He disrespected us at Apalachin. I was sending a message." "You were acting like a fool," Genovese said coldly. "You started a conflict that could cost us millions. You ignored the partnership we established, and you made the commission look weak." "Boss, he's a—" "Careful," Gambino interrupted. "Very careful what you say next." Gigante looked around the table. These were the most powerful men in organized crime, and they were all staring at him with cold, hard eyes. "Here's what's going to happen," Genovese continued. "You're going to Harlem. You're going to meet with Bumpy Johnson, and you're going to apologize." Gigante's face went white. "You can't be serious." "Do I look like I'm joking?" "You apologize publicly, in front of his people. You acknowledge that you acted without authorization and that the commission values its partnership with Harlem." "I won't do it. I won't humiliate myself in front of—" Genovese's hand slammed on the table. "You'll do it, or you're out. Out of my family. Out of the commission. Out of this life. You think I'm going to let your pride destroy a partnership worth millions? You think I'm going to start a war with Harlem because you can't control your ego?" The room was silent. "You have a choice, Vincent. Apologize or disappear. What's it going to be?" 2 days later, Vincent Gigante walked into the Cotton Club in Harlem. Bumpy Johnson was waiting, surrounded by his top lieutenants, Illinois Gordon, Willie Lee, Marcus Cole, and 50 of Harlem's most connected people. Word had spread. Everyone knew what was about to happen. Gigante approached Bumpy's table. His face was stone, but his eyes betrayed his humiliation. "Mr. Johnson," he said, his voice barely controlled, "I acted without authorization when I had your people attacked. The commission has made it clear that Harlem is a valued partner, and I disrespected that partnership. I apologize." The room was dead silent. Every person there understood the significance. Vincent Gigante, one of the most feared men in the Italian mob, was apologizing to a black gangster in front of a room full of witnesses. Bumpy let the moment hang. Then he stood, extended his hand. "Apology accepted, Mr. Gigante. We all make mistakes. What matters is how we correct them." Gigante shook his hand. The grip was brief, formal, but it was done. The message was sent. As Gigante left, Illinois Gordon leaned close to Bumpy. "You just made the Italian mob apologize to Harlem. In public. Boss, you know what this means?" Bumpy watched Gigante's car pull away. "It means Harlem isn't minor league anymore. It means we don't just have a seat at the table. We own part of the table." Gigante will never forgive this. Probably not, but he'll respect it. And in this world, respect is more valuable than friendship. The story of what happened at Appalachian and its aftermath spread through the underworld like wildfire. Bumpy Johnson, the black gangster from Harlem, had stood up to the commission and won, had forced Vincent Gigante to apologize publicly, had proven that Harlem wasn't just territory to be exploited, but a power to be reckoned with. In the years that followed, the Italian families never again questioned Bumpy's legitimacy, never again treated Harlem as subsidiary or minor league. The partnership continued, profitable for everyone, built on mutual respect and the understanding that Bumpy Johnson had established with 5 simple words. "Harlem feeds your families." Those words changed everything. They reminded the most powerful crime bosses in America that power doesn't come from tradition or ethnicity or old world codes. Power comes from control, from infrastructure, from the ability to make or break operations with a single decision. Bumpy Johnson had that power. And on November 14, 1957, in a room full of Italian dons who thought they controlled the underworld, he proved it. Not with violence, not with threats. With 5 words that cut through decades of prejudice and assumption and forced the commission to see what had always been true. Harlem wasn't asking for a seat at the table. Harlem was the table, and Bumpy Johnson was the man who made them understand it. If this story showed you a different side of power, a moment when intelligence and truth defeated prejudice and intimidation, hit that subscribe button. We're bringing you the untold stories of Bumpy Johnson, the moments when one man changed the rules of organized crime forever. Drop a comment. Was Bumpy right to threaten the commission? Could anyone else have pulled this off? Where do you draw the line between respect and submission? Turn on notifications. We're diving deep into the moments that made Bumpy Johnson a legend, the confrontations that proved Harlem belonged at the table of power. Remember November 14, 1957, the day a black gangster made the commission retreat with 5 words. The day respect was earned, not given. The day Harlem proved it wasn't minor league, it was the majors.